Hi there, and welcome to the Horn Call Podcast, the official podcast of the International Horn Society. I'm James Bolden. I'm the publications editor for the IHS and one of your hosts.
And I'm Kate Warren. Today we had the pleasure to interview Derek Wright, who is one of the co-owners of Houghton Horns. And he gave us some fantastic insight into how his career developed into working for Houghton and eventually purchasing a part of the company, but also gave us some really interesting book recommendations for effective practice, for business management, and just some amazing kernels of knowledge that I think you all are going to really enjoy listening to.
That's right. Yeah, lots of good advice in there. So without any further delay, here is our discussion with Derek Wright. Yeah, Derek, thanks so much for joining us today. We're excited to chat with you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Derek, right before we started rolling, I was just showing my age a little bit. I said, I've known you for a long time, and the first time I came across you was I saw these really, really good videos that some guy at Arizona State had put out. It wasn't John Erickson, but it was a student of his, a doctoral student. And I saw these really, really great videos, and you had a blog and a website, but you've come a long way since then. I guess we all have, but you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now and where we find you at this moment?
Well, right now, I'm one of the owners of Houghton Horns. So I'm one of four. There's me, there's Mark Houghton, Dennis Houghton, the founder, I'm sure everyone knows about, and Karen Houghton, his wife. Although of the four, I'm the only one left in town. Dennis and Karen retired just a few months ago, earlier in June, and they bought a new house, Pennsylvania, and moved away. So now I'm the only one left.
I imagine that's keeping you pretty busy.
Oh yeah, it is. It's it wasn't a huge shift because I had been handling most of the management side of the business and stuff like that for a while. So them leaving didn't shift anything radically for me. And of course, Mark is still very active in the business. He handles a lot of the marketing and our event planning and so on. So it's not just me, but
you're the only one in residence. So
yeah, I'm the only one in residence.
Well, that's great. Do you want to sort of catch us up a little bit for anybody who may not be familiar with your journey up to this point? Maybe give us the thumbnail sketch or as much detail as you'd like.
Sure. Yeah. So I, to give away my age, I'm in my 40s now. So I like to pretend I'm still a young man.
You're only as old as you feel.
Exactly. But I started off University of Illinois as a horn player. My high school experience was not substantial. I started horn as a sophomore in high school. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I went to a small private school. It was kind of a parochial school just because the public schools weren't great. So if anyone, so if you cared about education at all, you tried to avoid those. And I joined band. I was an alto saxophone player. This was a very small band, 30, 40 people. And they needed a French horn player for a piece. So I was like, oh, I could do that. And I switched and just kept playing from there. But I didn't have any formal training through high school and decided I wanted to go into music. I was really totally blind, I did not know that I was not prepared to do what I was doing. So I applied for all of these schools. I remember, I applied for the Manhattan School of Music and went to New York to audition and applied for all of these other top schools. I applied for the Cleveland Institute of Music and all of these schools that, looking back on, I had no shot of ever making it into. including the school I actually ended up going to. I ended up going to University of Illinois. I studied with Machala. I auditioned for him, and he told me straight out, like in the audition, like, hey, you're not playing well enough to get accepted here. But I see, you haven't had any formal training. You've only been playing for a few years. And I'm really impressed at what you've done on your own. So, hey, come here for the summer and take some lessons with me. I'll put you on the wait list. And if everything goes well, I'll take you off that wait list and accept you. And that's what I ended up doing.
So you took quite a gamble there.
I really did. So I went to University of Illinois, went to University of Minnesota for my master's degree, went to Arizona State for my doctoral degree, and said Minnesota, where I started to become interested in equipment because I was playing around with mouthpieces and such and just became fascinated with just how much of a difference each mouthpiece and such could make. I really started getting into reading lots of method books, lots of technique books, things like that. And that kind of continued on into Arizona State. Those of you who are familiar with the professor at Arizona State, Dr. John Erickson, he is the writer of the Horn Matters blog and prominent figure in the academic horn community.
Yeah, I was going to say you could not have picked a better place for someone interested in the equipment side of things. I mean, he's a solid teacher and player all around.
Oh, yes.
If it can be said that he has a bit of a specialty or a passion, it is equipment and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I really started getting into it. Like he had, I was a TA there, and he gave the TAs a key to his office. So it's just like an extra practice space when he wasn't around, which thinking back on was like, that was really great. Excellent teacher, excellent person. And I would go into his office, practice, and he had like a bunch of mouthpieces there, and I'd play around with them and just see how each one worked and what each one did. So after that, I graduated from Arizona State. I graduated in 2010, and we were in the middle of the Great Recession. My original plan was to apply for college teaching jobs and become a professor somewhere. That had been the plan for a long time. And I saw myself as a college teacher. But there were no jobs available. I don't even mean that like I applied for a bunch of jobs and got rejected. Like at the moment I graduated, there wasn't even anything to apply for to get rejected from. State school budgets have been cut. Lots of universities across the country had instituted hiring freezes. And I was finishing up my dissertation and just realizing that I wasn't going to have a place to go or anything to do. That I started I during my doctoral degree, I had a blog called Hornish Journey because I was really getting passionate about writing a lot of stuff about technique and as such. I've taken most of it down because a lot of it I don't stand by anymore. And looking back on it, a lot of it was parroting stuff that I had read. And, I hadn't, being that young, I hadn't had the time to develop anything of my own at that point, at least truly of my own. But I was hoping all of that would help me get a college teaching job and, kind of show that I was getting started, but it didn't happen. So what I ended up doing, speaking of gambles, one of my office mates from the year before, he had graduated and he had moved to Texas with his wife, who was from Texas, and he had found all of these students to teach. So I gave him an email and I'm like, hey, I don't want to stay here in Phoenix because staying here in Phoenix means getting a 9 to 5 doing something. There was no way I was going to be able to continue to pay rent and all that. But, maybe I could move to Texas, get some more experience teaching students and make a living that way. It could be I can move students around, be flexible, still take auditions, still interview for positions and such. And, he said, yeah, I just emailed band directors, and just found teaching. So I made the decision. I'm just going to move, to Texas. No job, no students, no nothing. And I was going to try to find students to teach and figure out a way to pay rent and keep going from there. So that's what I did. And luckily I was successful. Like I was able to find 40 students to teach my first year, a half-hour students. Mm-hmm. And then next year at my peak, I had about 65 students that I was teaching.
Oh, wow.
But things didn't work out as I had planned, because as I was teaching all those students, I did not realize that, number one, teaching that many students takes a lot of energy. And that's a lot of energy that you can't subsequently use to practice or really do anything else. Also, teaching that many students it really wears on you. It can get to the point where you have a hard time waking up in the morning. It's like, okay, we're going to do this again and get through all of these lessons. And when you're teaching that many students, like as a college professor, I always dreamed of like developing, good teacher-student relationships with my students and really investing myself into the development. But all I really found myself doing was, you should practice, let's just go through your Region Etudes again. With 65, I couldn't even remember everyone's names, honestly. Forget developing good teacher-student relationships.
It becomes a grind.
Yeah. So toward like 3 or 4 years into that, a lot of my passion for teaching had dissipated. And through this time, there still weren't really any academic jobs opening up. I applied for like one part-time position within DFW Metroplex that I didn't end up getting. But I think that is the only academic job I ever ended up applying for, again, just because nothing was
available.
Nothing was opening up and being published openly. Mm-hmm. So just to break up the grind, I'm like, maybe instead of teaching students during the summer, I could learn to do some repair and do that over the summers. And okay, I could make money on repairs over the summers, and that could allow me to reduce my teaching load during the year to something more manageable, and hopefully get a little bit more time in to practice and really improve my craft. Another thing is, in school, like especially through grad school, I kind of felt, as a grad student, I was near the top of the studios, and I kind of felt like, oh, I'm a great player. I'm going to really do this. And then you jump into a freelance community like, DFW, we're the 4th largest city in the country, metro area anyway. And the freelance scene is huge. And I quickly realized that my playing at that time was not competitive compared to the freelancers in this area who frankly, there's a very high level of playing around here. It's very, very competitive. So all of this teaching I was doing and not practicing wasn't really helping with that at all. But anyway, I just emailed Dennis Houghton out of the blue. It's like, hey, if I could learn repair from you, like I'll work for free. I'll just come in, teach you something. I could help out with different tasks around. And he replied and said yes, which I always think how great that was, how generous that was, especially knowing now people email us all the time asking for jobs or work and looking to do different things. And frankly, a lot of those emails don't even get replied to just because there are so many. And the answer a lot of times is just like, no, sorry, you don't really have any space. Sorry, we don't really have, that kind of thing.
So what a fortunate opportunity that you got a yes at that moment.
Right. So I was stoked. I was super excited that he had replied positively. I think I showed up at his shop the next day, and I was like, okay, let's get started. Um, and I worked with him for a few months for free. And there ended up being like a situation where one of the repair techs, and we were still, at this time, we were still the shop was at his house. So everything was just happening at his house, out of his garage, and a little shop addition. Mm-hmm. So because that repair tech left and he needed some help, he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I can pay you this per hour if you can stay on and do some cleanings, do some basic things." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I would love to get paid." and continue working. I did that for another year or so. And I ended up, through all this time, and I guess I should mention to make things clear, and this is something a lot of people who come into the shop don't understand, the repair shop and the retail shop are actually two different businesses. Mm-hmm. So the repair shop was owned by Dennis solely, and is currently owned by two of his longtime technicians, Ben Allen and Christopher Reddick. And the retail shop was structured like I've mentioned before, where it was Dennis, his wife Karen, and his son Mark. I just proposed to Dennis and Mark, like, "Hey, I know you're selling a few horns here." And at this point, the retail operation was tiny. The retail operation wasn't even in the same the retail operation was operating out of a bedroom at Mark's house. And, they were selling, 2 or 3 horns a month. Like, that was great. Like, if it gets to 3 horns a month, that was awesome. And I was like, I could build a website, and I think, we could, it could do a lot better. At that point, I was really just looking for some extra money, and I had some website development experience, and, they said yes, and we agreed on a rate to build the website, and I started building the website, and the website was pretty successful because it brought in more business, but it brought in enough business that there needed to be someone to actually help
manage said business.
Yeah. Manage the website and ship everything out. Like, I built the website, and I even remember building it in such a way that, okay, at some point I'm going to stop building it and just release it to, you guys, and you'll manage it. And that just never happened. So I started doing some, shipping some stuff out, and then we started getting more appointments, and then I started doing sales appointments and stuff like that. We got one of the other part-time repair techs to help with shipping, and then as things grew, I ended up taking on enough responsibilities that I quit my teaching job because I was just too busy with working at the shop. And working at the shop was just a much better fit because that's when I really was able to start practicing a lot more, taking lessons, and really, starting to make progress and improve my playing to the point where I could be competitive in the freelance scene. After that, it just kind of becomes a blur. At some point, we grew big enough that one of Dennis's neighbors complained about all of the traffic, and we found out the hard way that the city did not actually allow a business like this to be run out of a residence. So we got kicked out. That was really scary for a while because we thought everything was done. But luckily, we were able to work things out with the city and the unnamed neighbor to give us a few months to move. We ended up buying our first building. It was just a converted house in an older section of town. And out of there, we kept growing, and then we just added an employee. We added another employee. This was about the time when, I became an owner of the shop, and I bought an equal share from everyone. And at that point, it was just... I forgot which one of the other owners said it, but one of the other owners just said, okay, at this point, we don't see how this business could even operate without you being here. So Um, yeah. So just kept adding employees, kept expanding. We got to the point a few years ago. We moved way too late, but where our current building had just gotten way too small for the scale of business we were doing. And then uh, in 2023, we bought a church. An old dilap.
How did that happen? I'm curious about, was it you were looking for like a certain square footage or in a certain area of town, or what led you to that particular facility?
Well, we were looking for a building that was larger. This facility had it had been abandoned for a while. It's pretty dilapidated. Um, the issue is that it the town we live in, Keller, Texas, it's pretty upscale, so you wouldn't think that buildings would lay fallow for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. But in this situation, the church building was too small for most modern churches. So like a new church really wasn't going to move in because you would have a small auditorium. You wouldn't really have place for like the kids areas or anything like that. And frankly, it was, for a church that could only seat 100 people, the building was too big. I mean, too expensive. Mm-hmm. Because it's in an area of town with up and coming. They're redoing it. A lot of new businesses are going in. And the owners of the building were really picky about who moved in. Mm-hmm. Like I know there was I don't know if it ever got serious. I know there was a proposal where the city wanted to just tear it down and build a parking lot there. And a lot of other people came in wanting to do the kinds of businesses out of the building that the owners just did not want to sell to. I don't know the entire story, but I know there was some sort of emotional attachment to the building. So they didn't want to sell to anyone who was going to tear it down or anyone who was going to modify it significantly or, turn it into something that wasn't an asset to the community.
Right.
So we made our offer. We thought we were going to be done renovating and moved in about 6 months or so. Took over 2 years. About $400,000 over budget on the renovations.
That's tax deductible, right? The business expense.
But we eventually got it done and moved in. And with this building, the area is a nightmare now because it's all torn up, but they're like putting in like fancy street lights and benches and completely redoing the streets with like brick pavers and wide sidewalks. They want to make it like a walkable central area to the city. It's going to look really nice when it's done. And even though we could have found cheaper facilities if we had moved out a little bit or just like found we could have found like a larger metal building or just something a little more rural where we would have been able to save some money. But we took the bet on trying to play into the experience of coming to our shop. Mm-hmm. Because we have people coming in from all over the country all of the time to try horns, because there aren't that many places across the country where you can try a lot of horns in one place. If you can't make it to the IHS symposium. And we just wanted to make it a place where people would feel really good, spending $500 on a plane ticket to fly in and come have the experience at the shop. And when someone comes in, like we've really tried to resist the urge to just become like another music store where you just come in and you just look around and then leave. Although you can just come in and look around and leave, especially with our new facility. You don't need to make an appointment anymore to come to Houghton Horns, as it was in the past.
That was a space issue, right?
That was just a space. Yeah. There are only so many people we could fit in, and that amount of people were small.
Well, because it was an old house, you had like actually separate rooms as if it was rooms of the house. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
and I think like our business occupancy was 22, And at any point in time, like 6 to 7 of those spots would have been taken up by employees. So you could do the math there.
But you've got a showroom now. You've got a proper, a big space.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a big showroom, like an area for lots of people to be in, so like if, 8, 9 different customers want to show up at the same time over Christmas time, you can do that. We have the room to accommodate you. Another popular thing is for college professors to just bring their studios on like a field trip. Yep. Before, it was always kind of like, yeah, we're happy to have you. It's going to be really
your
tight.
Eye twitches a little bit while you say yes.
Yeah.
But now we can do that comfortably. Bring people on, bring people on in. And I will say just a little plug on the podcast here. Like if you're a college professor and you want to bring in your studio, we'll even like do a special presentation for them. Something, like we could do a presentation on equipment or acoustics or something like that. Make your college studio visit a really special thing.
Well, Derek, it strikes me, I was going to say something to that effect. I mean, I think one of the things, and I'm not going out on a limb here with this, but I think one of the things that sets Houghton apart from a lot of the other businesses in the music retail industry is your educational focus. I mean, like you don't teach full time anymore, but like you guys seem to really care about making sure people have good information. You're not just in it to sell the most expensive product or anything like that. And I can say that firsthand, myself and my students. You really you do it right, for lack of a better way to describe it. But that I think that's really interesting and really something important about your company.
Yeah, and that's a part of that just comes from the background of all of the owners. Started with like Karen Houghton. She was a teacher in the area for over 30 years. Got to the point where she was sought after by lots and lots of high school students because she just had so many all-staters every year. To those of you not in Texas, you might be thinking like, oh, whatever. But in Texas, like all-state is a thing.
Big deal.
It is the thing. Dennis, people know him for his repair and all of that, but for the vast majority of the time he was running his business, he was also teaching like 30, 40 students in the schools.
And freelancing and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like his time as a full-time repair tech and, businessman, it's dwarfed by the amount of time he spent teaching. Yeah. And, Mark's in the Pittsburgh Symphony. And so he's sought after for a lot of pedagogical opportunities as well. So, I mean, that's where that teaching focus comes in. And it's about just like, there will be other people who enter the space of wanting to be like a custom horn dealer or a custom brass dealer. And I will give you a bit of advice. If you try to just maximize your profit and just sell whatever's most profitable, people will see through that. I could name several people off the top of my head, started businesses and they went away. And they went away because people can see through that. You might make short-term profit, you might make short-term gains, but eventually someone's going to be like, hey, this is not really worth what you're selling it to me. Or, you tell some young kid, like, you sound great on this horn. I think this is what you should have, knowing that, like, well, I'm just making more money off this horn. And of course, they're going to take it to the teacher, and the teacher is going to be, well, the C arpeggio isn't in tune.
Or it doesn't have a good high B flat or something.
Right.
Like that. Yeah.
Right. And when you ruin your reputation, it can be near impossible to recover it. So it's just not worth it. It's never worth it.
Yeah. Derek, I have kind of I'm known for this. I didn't prep you for this question, but I'm sure you're up to it. So for people who might be curious about sort of getting into this side of things, what does like an average day at Houghton Horns look like for you? Is there such a thing? How do you budget your time, for practicing and then like doing the marketing stuff? You're doing all those videos and the live streams, and how does that all fit together for you?
Well, I still maintain three hours of practice a day. And that's because number one, I, I do have a freelance playing career. Since the times I've moved here, I've won several positions in orchestras in the area. So that keeps me pretty busy playing wise, and just, additional freelancing and subbing. Uh, so I need to keep up my chops for that. I also want to keep up my chops for the business as well, because not only do I need to be able to test and evaluate horns, because our inventory is changing all the time, changing depending on the times and whatever. I need to make sure that what we're selling is good. In order to do that, I need to maintain playing at a high level. And I think a lot of other businessmen, you can, not everyone, but, a lot of other businessmen can let that slip and get to the point where you continue to think, what a good horn is and playing it, but, you're not really there anymore. And of course, being able to demonstrate instruments for videos and for the live streams and et cetera is also important as well. And I try to make sure I do that early in the day. Just from an energy standpoint, for me, my energy is highest in the mornings. So I do that, and I try to put that energy into some useful and good areas of practice. I've also learned throughout the years that bad practice is worse than no practice. So I need to make sure that, I'm always focused. I mean, I did a lot of bad practicing when I was teaching students, and I didn't make any progress at all. After that, it's hard to describe an average day, because I end up doing what needs to be done on any particular day. We're lucky to have a great crew of employees at the shop who are able to, operate independently. They don't need someone breathing down their necks, micromanaging all of their decisions. And that's just a management style, because I know some people just want more control and more saying every single thing that goes on. And that's not my style. That's not my personality. I like to let people have people still have to get their jobs done, and they still have goals, but I like to allow them to figure out how to do that on their own, or, set their own way of getting this stuff done rather than trying to dictate every detail. I guess one thing I skipped in all of this is, my wife works with me as well. And she's worked with me at the business for the last 8 years. And at this point, she really makes it go. So she handles all of the vendor relationships and all of the finances and accounting, accounting at the business, and just
keeps the lights on.
Yes. She keeps the lights on. But so I guess I'm not really answering the question really well. So
I think the evidence of, I think you're answering it great. I mean, that was kind of what I expected, because it seems like it's one of those jobs, Derek, where the work is never done. Like, you could stay awake for 24 hours and there would always be something to do, like the next thing or the next. But you seem to have balanced all of that really well, because the success of the company is evidence of that. So you must be doing those things right and finding some level of balance, because as you said, you have a wife and a family. You still got to, you got to be able to go home at night and, have a life outside of the business.
Yeah. And 2 kids that demand a lot of time.
They tend to do that.
Yeah.
Can I briefly keep us off task? Derek, a minute ago, you mentioned making sure that you were doing effective and good practice in your morning session, and that a morning is a part of helping yourself create that good practice session. What does that mean to you? What is a good or an effective practice session?
Well, that has recently changed for me because I've been really influenced by Molly Gebrian's book, and I really hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. But it's and you know what? I can't remember the name of the book, but it's a book about practicing. And it is incredible. Like it's completely changed my approach to practicing completely. Where she kind of not only emphasizes the importance of breaks and taking time for your brain to really absorb materials. And she's a musician and a neuroscientist. Here we go. We have it in the chat. Learn faster, perform better. A musician's guide to the neuroscience of practicing.
I'll put that link in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Or not in the notes, sorry, the show notes.
Yeah. I even have she has there's an appendix in the book that kind of summarizes a lot of the practice techniques that she talks about. And I have a version of that just taped to my music stand to always look at.
Keep you accountable to them.
Exactly. And what I've taken from her book and her writing, she's also done a lot of videos and other things online too that are great if anyone wants to check it out. But that I'm never playing just for the sake of playing. If I'm playing, I am trying to accomplish something. Like someone should be able to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, what are you trying to accomplish right now?" And I should say, "Oh, I'm doing this to improve my rhythm. I'm doing this to improve my intonation. I'm doing, yeah."
I want to paint that on the walls of every college practice room ever.
Yeah. But it's her stuff's really amazing. And I take that to heart in all my practice sessions these days.
Could you give us a nugget or something from that? You mentioned if someone were to stop you in the middle of your practice and ask you what you're doing, you should be able to be accountable for that. But is there anything else from that stands out to you as, a good endorsement of the book? By the way, I just ordered it. So. I was not aware of that one. I know a lot of those kinds of books are out there, but
you actually just had me reach to my shelf because I know I have a book by a musician and neuroscientist, and I was like, oh, is that the same author? It's not, but
okay. But yeah, I think you're really going to enjoy. You're really going to enjoy the book. It's one of those things. If I had ended up being a college professor this year at the beginning of the semester, I would have been required book. You need to go buy this. We're going to have quizzes on it.
So you're seeing gains in places perhaps that hadn't before or more accelerated growth? Okay.
Oh, yes. And it's for example, I'll just take one thing working on a technical practice. She talks on technical practice. She has a technique she talks about called interlead practicing, where instead of just there's always a debate over whether, do you just start slow and then try to speed it up? Or do you try to take it in small chunks at speed and then add them together? And her approach does both, where you can start from the beginning or the end, and you should mix it up to make sure that, you're approaching it from all sides. But you start on one measure and then you start it slow and then you speed it up. And then you add another measure. But then you don't just do those two measures. You still practice that one measure. And then you practice two. And then you practice one. Then you practice two. Then you add another measure. And then you practice those three. But then you still go back and you practice the one measure. And then you still practice the two measures together. And then you practice the three measures. So this is a time-consuming practice technique. But you know what? It works. And I say it's time consuming, but that's a lie because it works so well that it saves you time in the future. When I've used that practice technique, I found that that the work that I do on those measures sticks. I don't have to do it again. I don't have to go back and do the interleaf practice to learn those measures, in 4 or 5 days because I did it once.
So you learned the master key to efficient practicing.
Yeah, I've had I say yes, that has helped a lot. but yeah, I just can't. I can't recommend that enough as far as practicing is concerned.
That's awesome. Yeah. Going back to sort of thinking about your training as a musician, and then, I mean, you're obviously still super active as a performer and, all the educational side of Houghton Horns, but it strikes me that, you obviously have a marketing savvy, a communication ability that not necessarily everybody has. Is that something you felt like you've had all along, or did you develop it along the way? There's a lot of skills that go into being a successful business owner beyond just knowing your craft. And you obviously do. You mentioned that you got to know what a good horn plays like and sounds like, but if I could be so bold, I think it's more than that, right? Because you could be the best player on the planet and be a terrible business owner. So there's where did you put together all of these skills that have enabled you to be so successful?
I would say, as far as the business aspect of it, or really any aspect of it, I try to never believe that I know everything. It can be really easy to kind of just get to a point where you say, like, well, I was successful at this. Well, I'll just keep doing this and I don't need to keep learning. So I guess the best way to answer the question is that I learned a while ago and that I need to always learn. You know what? I'm going to throw it back to when I was in my master's degree and I started reading pedagogical books and method books and such to really try to improve my playing and, improve my embouchure, improve my airspeed and things like that. I took that same approach to business. Like, I read business books all of the time. There are sessions in Anaheim every January. There's something called the National Association of Music Merchants. It's a gigantic show. Huge show floor. A lot of it's just to show like new products to music dealers and things like that. But there are also lots of educational sessions that go on at the same time. And I've been several times. I try to go to that every year just to go and try to learn from others and other music store owners and from other aspects of business to improve my management skills, to improve my financial skills and such. It's also another association, the National Association of School Music Dealers. It's another conference that's held every single year where music store owners come and you have a lot of sessions and you learn. And also lots that they deal with. At some point you may think, well, I know everything I need to know. Why do I need to keep going? And it's because the world keeps changing. Yeah. It's everyone listening to this knows, the climate of importing products into the United States has changed significantly. And 70% of all musical instruments are imported that are purchased in the United States. So this is something that has affected our industry greatly across the board. And when you learn from these sessions and learn from others, they cover topics like that. They cover, how should your response be here to avoid making mistakes that can sink your business. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, with any business, you're just 2 or 3 bad decisions away from bankruptcy. And I'm not exaggerating. Like you make a few bad decisions, you don't correct them fast enough, you're closing your shop sooner than later.
You hear about that a lot in the restaurant industry. There's the new restaurant in the corner, and then like 6 months later, it's no longer there.
Yeah. So always trying to learn, never believing that you have the answer. There's always someone smarter than you in any area. In playing, there's probably someone very close by who plays better than you. There's something to learn from them. What are they doing? How are they practicing? What can you learn from them to bring your playing closer to what they're doing?
You mentioned reading a handful of books on business. Do you have any recommendations for musicians who might be interested in starting a music business or just getting into the industry side of things?
No, I don't really have any specific business books. There aren't really any books like written focused directly on the retail industry. So you have to read books from lots of different areas of business management in general and like piece together and take
what's applicable for your field.
Yeah, what's applicable to you. Because, you read some business books and you can clearly tell like, this is not applicable to me. Like one strategy that larger retailers took when the tariffs hit was this, because you could see it coming a mile away ever since we knew the administration was going to change. So people started stocking up on inventory. Well, let's just like stock up on inventory. And but margins in the music business are thin. Like there's no money to stock up. So, you have to be smart enough to know like, okay, this may be a great approach for
someone else.
Yes, this is not a great approach for, a music retailer because you're going to bankrupt yourself trying to avoid this.
Hetman oil, maybe an easy yes.
Yeah.
$10,000 French horns, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're gonna, you're seeing probably a lot more activity in the used and pre-owned market simply because of that, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. There is a book that I'm going to recommend. It is called The Savvy Musician.
Oh yeah, I've got that
by David Cutler.
Yeah.
So I know it's not about music retail in any shape or form, but it's another book that has been really influential in my approach to life in general. Mm-hmm. I first got it when I was at Arizona State and I knew I was moving to Texas and I was looking for books that kind of helped me figure out how to break into the freelancing scene. Mm-hmm. And what it really emphasizes is, I'm just being bold, mm-hmm. Like contacting people and being open about what you want. And that the way that applies to music retail is same thing. Your contact, if you're advertising, you're contacting someone, just being open, like I was talking to you, James, like, hey, I have a horn here I think would be great for you. We have it here for sale, versus trying to like be a snake about it and be like, hey, you should come by. Just come by. Just come by the shop for a visit. Yeah.
Being honest it goes a long way for sure.
Right. Versus like, you move to a new city and you're looking to break into the freelance scene, you're like, hey, I'd like to play for you. Mm-hmm. I'm interested in subbing in your orchestra. Mm-hmm. So you're not wasting people's time, because if their response is just like, I'm not looking for any more subs, they're not going to be mad at you for contacting them, and you're not going to waste your time trying to be like, mm-hmm. oh yeah, I just want to play for you. Just have a lesson and then be disappointed, when you're like,
wait for the email that never comes.
Exactly. And just about like presenting yourself well, making sure, the basics that you would think everyone knows, but you learn quickly that not everyone is truly aware, like dressing well, smelling good, those kind of things.
I'm gonna blame the pandemic on that, taking a dip for a little while, and then I think we're getting back to pre 2020 levels in some respects. But yeah, I think people living by themselves for years at a time was not good for people's for a lot of things. It was not good for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I mean that I was still very much like freshly under the influence of that book when I started, when I contacted Dennis to work at the shop and I took that chance. I was still kind of like really following that playbook, and that just really helped me through.
That's terrific. Well, Derek, I know I know we could keep going like this for hours because you've got tons and tons of awesome things to share, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time today. So what things are you what are you most excited about coming up for Houghton Horns, to the extent that you can reveal, anything that might be new and exciting coming out?
We have some exciting events coming up, but I can't share the details yet because, the contracts have not been signed.
Sure.
But pay attention for the announcements.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of exciting things at the shop, bringing in artists, having some, bring in some vendors, having some fun vendor days where they bring in some of the, some of the rare instruments that you may want to play or buy, but that we can't stock.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, just another mistake a lot of people who try to start a music retail business, or they talk about starting a music retail business, the mistake they make is like, well, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to stock all of the stuff I would want to see, at a store. Like, well, Houghton Horns, they never stock, new triple horns. I'm going to have new triple horns. And I'm thinking like, we don't stock new triple horns because they would sell about once a year. Mm-hmm. And that would.
Yeah. The margins on that.
Yeah. That would break you. Retail in general is a good way to think about it is that it's another way of investment. You take like a pot of money and you invest it into instruments, and then those instruments have to make a return. Mm-hmm. But, in order to make a good return, they have to make that return within a certain amount of time. It can't be eventually this horn is going to sell and I'm going to make my money back. That may work on an individual basis. Like if you're selling like your personal horn and you don't have a timeline, you can say, well, I'm just going to sell it for this and I'm just going to wait until someone buys it. That doesn't work in retail. Because you need to make that return so that you can take that money and then invest it into something else, and then get that return and then take that money and invest it into something else. So that's what drives inventory decisions. What are people, and of course, the root of that is what are people buying? If people are buying this and it's turning, it's going to be stocked. It's going to always be around. Mm-hmm. If, you have a descant horn, which would probably sell every 2 years, it's not turning. So it can't really stick around. So that kind of comes to the line that a lot of musicians going into any, not just music retail, but like a musician wanting to go into business in general, making that leap between this is what I like and what I would like to carry over to this is what I can carry and, and make money. And even like, I've in my time at Houghton Horns, I've designed and developed a lot of horns, a lot of mouthpieces. Like, I did a lot of the work to develop a lot of the horns in our Verus line and the acoustic testing and the specifications and stuff like that. And the Houghton Horns line, and especially the Verus line of mouthpieces. So you would think that, well, you've developed all of these mouthpieces. What Verus mouthpiece are you using? What Houghton mouthpiece are you using? What am I using? I use a Paxman 5C cup with a Paxman 5LX rim. Well, and
you got to use what's best for you at that moment. Yeah. So
it works really well for me. So you're like, well, why didn't you develop a mouthpiece like that? Because it's huge. I have thick lips. It has a gigantic rim that,
Yeah, from a marketing standpoint, you're not designing something that works for you. You're designing something that will work for as many people who can buy it as possible.
Right. Something that works for me is not going to be a mass market success. So it's like that kind of like, well, I could design a mouthpiece personally for me, and then I'm going to make that sell. Or I can design a mouthpiece that's going to work for a wide cross section of people, and then make that sell.
Yeah. And then, you have the option to have, you can do tweaks. You can have slightly different cup sizes and
exactly.
Sizes. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So
Mm-hmm.
that's great. Derek, thanks so much for sharing some of that with us today. I think it's always nice to close with maybe sharing a little bit about the IHS, because, Houghton Horns is just a perennial vendor at regional workshops and IHS symposium. We're always excited to see you at those. And I don't want to say for sure, but it's among the biggest and most robust exhibits you'll find at any of these workshops, especially TMEA. That's sort of your home court.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. At TMEA this year we'll have 22 booths.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
We pretty much have a zip code in the hall.
That's amazing. But maybe share a little bit about the IHS and what it's meant to you, not just to the business of Houghton Horns, but then, personally as a horn player and a musician.
Yeah, the IHS has meant a lot to me. I will forever remember the very first IHS I went to. It was at Indiana University. I was a student at University of Illinois, so getting over to Bloomington wasn't that big of a deal. My professor, Machala, who's also always been involved at the IHS and still comes to every symposium. You'll find him around somewhere, even though he's moved back to Poland. And
well, that's convenient because
that is convenient for the next one.
Yeah.
But he encouraged all of us to go. I went, and I remember going to one of the nightly recitals with Frank Lloyd as the guest artist. And I had never heard horn playing like that in my life. I didn't know that kind of horn playing even existed. Mm-hmm. And listening to Frank Lloyd play, like, I left that concert just like in a stupor, like, oh my, that was so good. And from that point on, like, I knew, like, I wanted to play like that. Mm-hmm. I wanted to play like Frank Lloyd. And that one concert, that one event, I cannot underemphasize how influential, like, that concert. Without that concert, I'm not even sure I'd still be a musician. Like, it was that good, and I was that impressed by the artistry that I saw. So the IHS has a special place in my heart, if for no other reason, just because of that one symposium. Now, I've been to many symposiums since then. Even before I was involved with Houghton Horns, I went to them every time they were in the U.S. Like, I remember going to University of Alabama. That was the other one I went to while I was in undergrad, and I went to the IHS Symposium in San Francisco and the one in Denver. I don't even remember the dates I'm associating with these, but I went to all of these pre-Houghton Horns. Mm-hmm. And of course, now that I'm involved in Houghton Horns, you'll see me at most of them. Well, I was going to say, as far as the business is concerned, IHS provides an excellent platform to just meet and talk to people who throughout the year just become names on a screen. Like, you see, so-and-so name ordered this off the website. So-and-so name emailed us. So-and-so name is making this order, and you get to go, you get to talk to them and meet them and, like, actually make that personal connection. So it's not so informal. Like, our business, we are not Sweetwater. We are not music and arts. We are not, even though we have e-commerce, we are not. And we do not want to be just a big impersonal e-commerce platform where we're just a name and a website. Like, we want to be people that you can come talk to and meet either at our shop or at, many of the, we also go to the regional workshops as well. Or at one of these workshops. And I do have to say, like, we don't make money at these things for the most part. There have been one or two IHSs that had really good sales, really good attendance, where we made money on the trip. But most of the time when we go to IHS, like, breaking even is great.
Mm-hmm. I have heard that said by other vendors. Yep.
Yeah. And when we go to a regional symposium, we're not even breaking even. Like we're just, but, so this isn't something to do to like, well, we're going to go here and try to, this is where we're going to make bank and we're going to really sell stuff and make money. It's really about, advertising. Mm-hmm. We are advertising. We are continuing to let people know that we are a thing that exists, and just, meeting people. And, for myself, and I know for like Dennis and Karen, who you'll still see at many of the symposiums, a lot of it is we want to go to also just see the sessions. Like we also want to see the master classes and the concerts at night and go on the fun side trips. So it's not just like we're going to show up and sell. We also want to do,
so
we also want to participate.
Personally and professionally participating in the French horn community through the International Horn Society.
Exactly. It's always a fun time. Sometimes it's a little too long, but it's always a fun time.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Derek. This has been awesome. This has been really fun.
But thank you again for having me.
The Horn Call Podcast is the official podcast of the International Horn Society. The views, information, or opinions expressed during this series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the International Horn Society. Copyright International Horn Society. Music by Brian K.M.